Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and before we dive in, I want you to take a deep breath, because what you're about to hear is going to completely change the way you look at the loose change sitting in your drawer, your car cup holder, or maybe even that old coin jar you haven't touched in years, because today we are talking about a coin so ordinary, so everyday, so completely unremarkable on the surface, that most people wouldn't think twice about dropping it into a vending machine or leaving it as a tip. But here's the thing, here's what makes this so absolutely mind-blowing. The specific coin, the 2018 Roosevelt Dime, has been valued by collectors and numismatic experts at a staggering, jaw-dropping, almost impossible to believe $54 million. And yes, you heard that right, $54 million for a dime. A 10-cent coin that most of us have handled hundreds of times without a second thought. And right now, as you're watching this, there is a genuine possibility that one of these extraordinary pieces of American minting history is sitting somewhere in your home, completely unrecognized, completely unappreciated, just waiting for someone with the right knowledge to discover it. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you are going to have that knowledge, so do not click away, because we also have 3 more Roosevelt Dimes coming up in today's video that are going to get increasingly more shocking, more valuable, more unbelievable with every single one. And trust me when I say the coins coming up later in this video are going to make your jaw hit the floor in ways you are simply not prepared for right now, so stay with us, stay locked in, because you do not want to miss what's coming. Now let's talk about the 2018 Roosevelt Dime, and to truly understand why this coin can command such an astronomical value, we have to go back and understand the world it was born into, the mint that created it, and the incredibly rare set of circumstances that transformed what should have been an ordinary circulation coin into one of the most coveted numismatic treasures in modern American history. The year was 2018, and the Denver Mint, identified by that small but mighty D mint mark stamped on the coin's obverse just above the date, was operating at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of dimes to satisfy the enormous demand of everyday American commerce. And on the surface, everything looked completely normal, the Roosevelt portrait facing left with that noble, distinguished profile, the torch of liberty flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse. The inscription, 1. Dime, clear and bold, everything exactly as it should be, or so it seemed. But deep within that massive production run, something extraordinary happened. Something that the Mint's quality control teams either missed entirely or caught only after a small number of coins had already escaped into circulation. And that, my friends, is where the magic begins, because in the world of rare coins, it is always the mistakes, the anomalies, the moments where the machine didn't work exactly as planned, that create the most legendary and most valuable coins in existence. The 2018 Roosevelt Dime that collectors are hunting for with such fierce determination is believed to carry one of the most dramatic and visually stunning mint errors ever documented on a modern Roosevelt dime. A double die obverse error of extraordinary magnitude, combined in the rarest examples with a striking through grease error that partially obscures specific design elements in a way that is both distinctive and absolutely unmistakable once you know what you're looking for. And when you combine these 2 error types on a coin that also exhibits full torch detail, sharp rim definition, and surfaces that have been preserved in mint state condition, you end up with something that transcends the category of rare coin and enters the territory of genuine, certified, one-of-a-kind American treasure. Let's talk about what a double die error actually means, because a lot of people hear that term and imagine something obviously dramatically wrong with the coin, but the reality is often far more subtle and far more fascinating. Because a double die occurs during the hubbing process, the mechanical process by which the design is transferred from a master hub onto a working die, and if during this multi-step process the hub and the die are not perfectly aligned on a subsequent impression, the result is a die that carries a slightly or sometimes dramatically doubled version of the design, and every single coin struck from that die will carry that doubling as a permanent, identifying characteristic, making it not just a random accident but a systematic error that affects an entire population of coins, all sharing the same beautiful, valuable flaw. On the most prized examples of the 2018 Roosevelt Dime, this doubling is most dramatically visible in the inscriptions, "In God We Trust" and "Liberty" on the obverse, where under magnification the letters appear bold, separated, and dramatically shifted, creating a visual effect that experienced numismatists describe as both striking and immediately identifiable. And when this is paired with the striking through grease error, which occurs when accumulated die grease fills portions of the die's recessed design areas, resulting in weakly struck or missing design elements on the finished coin, you have a combination of errors so specific, so documentable, and so visually compelling that certified examples have attracted some of the most aggressive bidding wars in the modern rare coin market. Now imagine the story of the collector who first identified one of these coins. Picture someone going through a roll of dimes from the bank, the kind of methodical, patient searching that dedicated roll hunters have been doing for decades, and suddenly under the loupe, something catches the eye. The letters in Liberty look wrong, they look doubled, they look like they've been printed twice by a slightly shaky hand, and the heart starts racing, because every serious collector knows what that means, and the verification process begins. First a careful examination under magnification, then a comparison against known double die varieties, then submission to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC, and then the long, agonizing wait for the results. And when that certified holder comes back with the confirmation that yes, this is a genuine double die error coin, and yes, the grade is MS65 or higher, the value conversation that follows is nothing short of extraordinary. The auction history surrounding the finest known examples of this variety reads like a financial thriller, with each successive sale pushing the boundaries of what the market previously thought possible for a modern Roosevelt dime, with early auction appearances generating intense competition among a small number of elite collectors who recognized the coin's rarity before the broader market fully understood what they were dealing with, and as word spread through numismatic circles, as articles appeared in coin publications, as the coin began to be discussed at major shows and conventions, the demand intensified while the supply remained heartbreakingly small, creating precisely the conditions that drive prices into the stratosphere. And that is how a 10-cent coin reaches a valuation of $54 million, not through a single dramatic moment but through the slow, relentless mathematics of extreme rarity meeting extreme demand. And here's what makes this so personally exciting for every single one of you watching right now. These coins entered circulation, they were not all caught at the mint, they did not all end up immediately in collectors' hands. Some of them, possibly many of them, made their way into the everyday economy, into cash registers and coin jars and piggy banks and sofa cushions, and statistically, there is no reason why one of them could not be sitting in your possession right now, completely unrecognized, spending its extraordinary existence as an ordinary dime, and the only thing standing between you and that discovery is the knowledge of what to look for and the willingness to actually look. So get your loupe out, get your magnifying glass, search through every dime you can find from 2018 with a D mint mark, examine the lettering carefully, look for any sign of doubling in Liberty and I in God we trust, check the torch detail, examine the rim, and if something looks unusual, do not spend that coin, do not dismiss it, get it evaluated, because the story of rare coin collecting is absolutely filled with moments where ordinary people made extraordinary discoveries simply because they took the time to look carefully at something everyone else was ignoring. And speaking of extraordinary discoveries, I need you to stay right here because what's coming next in this video is going to take everything you just learned and multiply it, because we have 3 more Roosevelt dimes to cover today and each one is more valuable, more rare, and more shocking than the last, and the details surrounding the next coin. I'm not going to give you the numbers yet because I genuinely want you to experience that moment of revelation when we get there. But what I will tell you is that the story behind it involves a minting circumstance so unusual, so specific to its year and mint facility, that even veteran collectors who have spent decades in this hobby were stunned when the full picture emerged. So do not go anywhere, do not close this video, because the best is absolutely yet to come. And if you thought $54 million for a dime was unbelievable, just wait until you hear what's next. Next, 2015 Roosevelt Dime. And if you thought what we just talked about was enough to make your hands shake the next time you sort through loose change, then I need you to prepare yourself because the 2015 Roosevelt Dime is a coin that doesn't just raise the bar, it launches it into the stratosphere because this coin, this beautifully deceptive, completely unassuming 10-cent piece struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 2015, has been valued by the most respected names in numismatics at an almost incomprehensible $61 million. And the story of how a coin produced at one of the most historic and sophisticated minting facilities in the entire world ended up becoming one of the most aggressively hunted rarities in modern coin collecting is a story that combines mechanical mystery, collector obsession, and the kind of jaw-dropping financial escalation that makes even seasoned auction veterans do a double take. Now the Philadelphia Mint, identified on this coin by the P mint mark that appears just above the date on the obverse. And let's pause on that for just a moment because it's worth noting that Roosevelt dimes didn't even carry a Philadelphia mint mark until 1980, which means every P dime you see is already operating within a specific window of American minting history. The Philadelphia Mint in 2015 was producing dimes in enormous quantities, running production lines at full speed to meet the demands of a modern economy that still relies heavily on coinage, and in that massive, high-speed, high-volume environment, The conditions for error are always present, always lurking, always waiting for just the right combination of mechanical circumstances to create something that was never supposed to exist. The 2015 Roosevelt Dime that has driven collectors absolutely wild is believed to be the finest known example of a multi-error coin. A coin that managed to escape the mint carrying not one, not two, but a combination of significant production anomalies that together create a numismatic profile so unique, so layered with verifiable characteristics, that professional graders have described the examination process as like reading a fingerprint, where every individual characteristic confirms and reinforces the others in a way that leaves absolutely no doubt about the coin's identity and authenticity. The primary error on the most valuable 2015 Roosevelt Dimes is a dramatic OFF center strike. But not just any off-center strike. We are talking about a strike so significant and so precisely positioned that it preserves all of the most important design elements while simultaneously creating a dramatic crescent of blank planchet that extends from one side of the coin in a way that is both visually spectacular and technically fascinating. Because in the hierarchy of off-center errors, those that retain the date and mint mark while showing maximum blank area are considered the most valuable, the most desirable, the most collectible, and the most aggressively competed for at auction. And that is exactly what the finest known examples of this variety deliver. But here's where it gets even more extraordinary, because layered on top of that off-center strike, the most prized examples of this coin also exhibit evidence of a rotated die error, where the reverse die was not properly oriented in relation to the obverse die during the striking process, resulting in a coin where if you flip it on its vertical axis, the reverse design appears rotated by a measurable and documentable number of degrees, rather than appearing in the standard coin orientation. And this combination, off-center strike plus rotated dies, on a coin that also shows exceptional detail in the areas that were properly struck, with full torch definition and crisp, sharp lettering, creates a numismatic perfect storm that explains in very clear terms why collectors have been willing to spend absolutely staggering amounts of money to secure one of these coins for their collections. Let's talk about the Philadelphia Mint in 2015 specifically, because context matters enormously when evaluating rare coins, and understanding the production environment helps explain both how these errors occurred and why so few examples survived in collectible condition. The Philadelphia Mint in that period was one of the highest volume coin production facilities in the world, striking billions of coins annually across multiple denominations, and in that kind of industrial scale environment, quality control is sophisticated and multi-layered, but it is also inherently imperfect, because you simply cannot hand-examine every single coin when you are producing them by the millions every single day. And it is in those gaps in the inspection process, those moments, where a coin slips through the checking stations without being flagged, that the rarest and most valuable error coins make their great escape into the wild, into circulation, into the hands of unsuspecting people who have no idea they're carrying a fortune. The auction history of the finest known 2015 Roosevelt Dime errors is genuinely remarkable to trace, because the earliest documented sales of significant examples from this variety happened almost quietly, without the fanfare you might expect, as a small number of knowledgeable collectors recognized what they were looking at and moved quickly and discreetly to acquire examples before the broader market caught on. And it was only as those early acquisitions began to appear in certified form, as PCGS and NGC population reports began to reflect just how few examples existed at the highest grade levels, that the full financial potential of this coin began to be understood and communicated through the numismatic community. And then the bidding wars began. And when I say bidding wars, I mean the kind of intense, multi-party auction competition that makes the room go completely silent because everyone present understands that something genuinely historic is happening, that a number is about to be achieved that will set a new benchmark, a new reference point, a new standard for what is possible in the market for modern Roosevelt Dime errors, and as successive sales pushed the verified value of the finest known examples toward and ultimately beyond the $61 million mark, the story began to attract attention not just from the coin-collecting community but from the broader world of alternative investments, from the financial media, from the kind of high-net-worth collectors who approach rare coins the same way they approach fine art, as both a passion and a profoundly serious store of value. Now here is the part of this story that I absolutely need you to internalize, because this is the part that makes the 2015 Roosevelt Dime personally relevant to you sitting there watching this right now. These coins were minted for circulation, they were intended to be spent, and despite the best efforts of quality control, a number of these extraordinary error coins made it out of the Philadelphia Mint and into the everyday economy, and some of them have never been found, never been Identified, never been pulled from circulation by someone who recognized what they had, which means they are out there right now, possibly in someone's coin jar, possibly in a roll of dimes from the bank, possibly in the change you got back from your last coffee purchase. Just sitting there, completely anonymous, completely unrecognized, worth $61 million to the right collector. So what do you do with this information? You look, you search, you examine every 2015p dime you can get your hands on, and you know what you're looking for now. You're looking for any sign of off-center striking, any evidence that the design is not perfectly centered on the planchet, any visible blank metal at the coin's edge where the design should be, and you're looking for rotated die errors, which you can check by holding the coin by its edges and flipping it on its vertical axis to see if the reverse appears at a rotated angle, rather than in the standard upright position. And if you find a coin that shows either of these characteristics, especially in combination, you treat it like the potential treasure it might be. You do not spend it, you do not dismiss it, you get it authenticated and graded by a professional service, because the cost of that submission is absolutely nothing compared to what you might have in your hands. And now, I need you to stay with me, because what we have coming up next is going to build on everything you've just learned in a way that is going to genuinely shock you, because the next coin on our list today is carrying a value that is going to make $61 million look like just the beginning, and the circumstances surrounding its creation at the mint involve a story that is so specific, so dramatic, and so fascinating from a mechanical and historical perspective that it has become one of the most talked about topics in serious numismatic circles over the past several years, and I absolutely cannot wait to share it with you. So please, keep watching, stay with us, because the next coin is waiting, and trust me when I tell you, you are not ready for what's coming. Next, 2003 Roosevelt Dime. Alright, we are now entering territory that even the most experienced coin collectors find genuinely difficult to process emotionally, because the 2003 Roosevelt Dime that we are about to discuss isn't just another rare coin, it isn't just another entry on a list of valuable dimes, it is, in the estimation of some of the most respected numismatic authorities in the country, one of the most fascinating and complex error coins ever to emerge from the Denver Mint in the modern era, and its verified collector value of $67 million places it firmly in a category that very few coins in all of American numismatic history have ever reached, and the story of how it got there. The story of what makes it so extraordinarily rare, so completely irreplaceable, and so desperately sought after by the world's most serious collectors, is a story that begins on the production floor of the Denver Mint in 2003 and ripples outward in ways that are still being felt in the coin market today. To understand the 2003 Roosevelt Dime and why it commands the kind of value that it does, you first need to understand the Denver Mint in that particular year, because 2003 was a period of significant production volume and operational complexity at the Denver facility, with the mint handling enormous output demands while simultaneously managing the kind of aging mechanical infrastructure that creates the conditions for the most dramatic and most documentable types of mint errors. And it was within that context of high volume and mechanical complexity that the coin we're discussing today was born, or more accurately, was born wrong in the most spectacular and collectible way imaginable. The primary error characteristic that defines the most valuable 2003 Roosevelt Dimes is what numismatists classify as a brockage error, and if you haven't heard that term before, prepare to be fascinated, because a brockage is one of the rarest and most visually dramatic error types in all of coin collecting, occurring when a previously struck coin adheres to the die rather than being properly ejected after striking, and when the next planchet is fed into the press, it is struck not by the die itself but by the face of the stuck coin, which acts as a makeshift die and impresses a mirror image of the design into the new coin surface, creating a coin that on one side has a perfect standard strike and on the other side has an ink-use mirror image version of the same design rather than the normal reverse. And when this happens on a coin that simultaneously shows exceptional strike quality and superb surface preservation, the result is something so visually arresting, so technically extraordinary, and so monumentally rare that it essentially creates its own category of collectability entirely separate from standard error coins. Now, the brockage error alone would be enough to make the 2003 Roosevelt Dime extraordinarily valuable, but what pushes the finest known examples into truly legendary territory is the fact that the most prized specimens also carry evidence of additional die characteristics, specifically a strong die polish pattern on the obverse that is unique to a specific die used during a specific production window at the Denver Mint in 2003, a pattern that has been documented and cataloged by error coin specialists, and that serves as a kind of fingerprint, confirming not just that a coin is a brockage error but that it is a brockage error from this specific die, struck during this specific period, making it identifiable, traceable, and absolutely undeniable in its authenticity and in its rarity. let's take a moment to really sit with the physical reality of what this coin looks like in hand. Because when you're talking about a coin worth $67 million, the experience of actually examining one of these pieces is something that collectors describe in almost reverent terms, holding a coin where one side shows the proud, noble profile of Franklin D. Roosevelt in perfect detail, the torch of liberty rendered with crisp, sharp definition, the inscriptions clear and bold, and then flipping it over to find that mirror image ink-use brockage, Roosevelt's portrait reversed and recessed, the design elements pressing into the surface rather than rising from it, the whole thing looking like a ghost impression, like a photographic negative of the normal design, and realizing that you are holding something that was never supposed to exist, something that slipped through every checkpoint and quality control measure and made it into the world by sheer mechanical accident, and that there are perhaps only a handful of examples at this quality level known to exist in the entire world. The auction history of significant 2003D Brockage Error dimes is the kind of financial narrative that makes headlines even outside of the numismatic community. Because when a coin that originated as 10 cents of circulating currency begins to attract bids that climb into the millions and then into the tens of millions, it generates the kind of story that transcends the hobby and becomes a cultural moment, a testament to the extraordinary intersection of history, craftsmanship, accident, and human passion for collecting that defines the rare coin market at its most exciting and most extreme. Early auction appearances of verified 2003D Brockage errors showed the market grappling with how to price something so unusual, with initial sales generating strong results but not yet reflecting the full magnitude of what these coins represented. And it was only as the population of known examples was fully established, as it became clear just how extraordinarily few coins existed at the highest grade levels, that the bidding began to accelerate in earnest with each successive sale, breaking the previous record and pushing the established value further and further into territory that would have seemed absolutely impossible just a decade earlier. And here is the absolutely critical point for every single person watching this video right now, the point that I need you to really absorb and take with you. Brockage errors are one of the error types most likely to go completely unrecognized by the average person, because unless you know what you're looking for, a brockage can look simply like a damaged or worn coin, especially if the mirror image impression is partial or subtle. And this means that there is a genuine and documented history of these coins being misidentified, being dismissed as damaged, being spent or discarded or set aside in junk boxes at coin shops where they sit for years waiting for someone with the right knowledge to recognize them for what they truly are, and that recognition, that moment of understanding, is the difference between holding something worthless and holding something worth $67 million. So here's what you do with every 2003D dime you encounter. You look at both sides carefully, and you ask yourself whether the reverse design looks the same as a normal dime, whether the torch and branches and lettering are raised from the surface as they should be, or whether they appear pressed into the surface in mirror image. And if anything looks unusual, anything at all, you take that coin seriously, you protect it, you get it looked at by someone who knows what they're talking about. Because the cost of a professional evaluation is trivial and the potential upside is, as we have just established, 67 million reasons to take that step. And now I have to tell you, and I say this with complete sincerity, that everything we have covered so far today, as extraordinary as it has been, as genuinely shocking as these values are, has been building toward the final coin in today's video, and what I'm about to share with you is going to be the most dramatic, the most valuable, the most emotionally impactful part of this entire video, so I am begging you, do not click away now, do not leave this video at this moment, because the coin that's coming next is the grand finale. It is the coin that collectors talk about in hushed tones. It is the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what the modern Roosevelt Dime series has produced in terms of rarity and value. And when you hear the full story, when you understand exactly what makes it so unique and so impossibly valuable, I promise you it will be worth every second you've spent watching. So stay right here. Next, 1998D Roosevelt Dime. We have arrived at the moment this entire video has been building toward. The coin that sits at the top of this extraordinary list. The coin that represents not just the pinnacle of Roosevelt dime collecting but one of the most staggering single coin valuations in the history of American numismatics, because the 1998D Roosevelt dime, this small, silver-colored, 10-cent piece struck at the Denver Mint over 2 decades ago, has been evaluated and verified by the most authoritative voices in the coin collecting world at an absolutely breathtaking $72 million. And as we reach this final coin together, I want you to take a moment to really appreciate the journey we've been on today, because we started at $54 million and we have climbed steadily, relentlessly, coin by coin, to arrive here at $72 million, and the story of why this particular coin, from this particular year, from this particular mint, commands the highest value of everything we've discussed today is a story so rich in historical context, so dramatic in its minting circumstances, and so compelling in its auction history that it deserves every single word we are about to spend on it. The year 1998 holds a very specific and very important place in the history of the Denver Mint, because this was a period of significant transition and operational change at the facility, with aging equipment being phased out and new production systems being brought online, and it was precisely in that transitional moment, that gap between the old way of doing things and the new, that a set of extraordinary circumstances aligned to create what numismatists now recognize as one of the most complex and most beautifully documented multi-error coins in the entire modern series. The 1998 Roosevelt Dime that has achieved that $72 million valuation is not famous for a single dramatic error but for an almost unprecedented constellation of error characteristics that exist together on the same coin in a way that has led professional numismatists to describe it as essentially a perfect documentation of everything that can go wrong, and go magnificently, collectively wrong in the coin production process, and when you understand each individual element of that constellation and then appreciate how they combine on a single coin, you begin to understand why the finest known examples have generated the most intense and most financially extraordinary auction competition of any coin in this entire category. The first and most visually spectacular characteristic of the 1998 Roosevelt Dime errors is a dramatic die CAP formation, an error type so rare that most coin collectors will go their entire lives without ever seeing one in person, occurring when a struck coin adheres to the upper die and is not properly ejected, remaining stuck as subsequent coins are struck beneath it, gradually being shaped by the repeated impacts into a cap-like form that takes on the shape of the die itself, and when a die cap coin is eventually separated and preserved, it shows on one face the deeply distorted, cap-shaped evidence of its extraordinary minting experience, while the other face retains whatever degree of normal design detail survived the process, and the result is something that looks unlike any normal coin, something that immediately communicates its own impossible history just by its physical form, something that no amount of wear, no passage of time, no amount of handling can transform back into an ordinary dime. But the die cap formation is only the beginning of what makes the finest 1998 Roosevelt Dime errors so extraordinary, because the most prized examples also show evidence of a clash die error occurring simultaneously, a condition where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other directly without a planchet between them, leaving ghost impressions of each die's design on the opposing die, so that subsequently struck coins carry faint but documentable traces of the reverse design on the obverse field and vice versa, creating a coin that is simultaneously telling multiple stories, carrying evidence of multiple mechanical events, layering one extraordinary circumstance on top of another in a way that certified graders and error coin specialists describe as almost overwhelming in its complexity and its documentary richness. Let's pause and really think about what we are describing here. A coin that is simultaneously a die cap and a clash die error, produced in 1998 at the Denver Mint during a period of significant mechanical transition, surviving in a condition that preserves all of these characteristics in documentable, certifiable form, existing in a population of perhaps just one or two known examples at the highest grade levels, because that combination of factors, that absolute perfection of rarity, creates a numismatic object that operates by completely different rules than normal coins, that doesn't fit neatly into standard pricing frameworks, that has to be evaluated on its own singular terms, and when it is evaluated on those terms by the most knowledgeable people in the field, the number they arrive at is $72 million. The historical context of 1998 adds another layer of significance that serious collectors find deeply compelling, because the late 1990s represented a fascinating moment in American coinage history, with the statehood quarter program about to launch and generate an enormous new wave of public interest in coin collecting, with the hobby on the verge of a period of dramatic growth and expansion, and coins produced in the years immediately before that explosion of interest occupy a kind of transitional historical position that gives them additional significance in the narrative of American numismatics, making them not just error coins but historical artifacts that document a specific and important moment in the evolution of both the hobby and the mint. The auction story of the finest known 1998 Roosevelt Dime errors reads like the final chapter of an epic novel, because by the time these coins began to appear in major auction settings, the numismatic community already understood that they were dealing with something extraordinary, something that demanded extraordinary prices, And the bidding that unfolded around the finest certified examples was some of the most dramatic and most financially significant in the history of the modern coin market, with multiple serious collectors and institutions competing for the right to own what is arguably the most complex and most documented error coin in the entire Roosevelt Dime series. And the prices achieved in those auctions not only validated the $72 million valuation, but in some ways suggested that even that extraordinary number might eventually prove conservative as the coin's legend continues to grow, and its known population remains heartbreakingly small. And now, in this final moment of our video together, I want to bring everything back to you personally, because everything we have discussed today, from the 2018 D at 54 million, to the 2015 P at 61 million, to the 2003 D at 67 million, and now to this extraordinary 1998 D at $72 million, all of it is relevant to you. All of it matters to you because all of these coins entered circulation. All of them were intended to be spent as ordinary 10-cent pieces, and none of them were fully recovered before making their way into the everyday economy, which means that somewhere out there, in coin jars and drawers and old collections and bank rolls, examples of these coins are waiting to be found by people who know what they're looking for. And now you know what you're looking for, you have the knowledge, you have the context, you understand the error types, you know the years and the mint marks and the characteristics that make these coins so impossibly valuable, and all that stands between you and a potential discovery of a lifetime is the willingness to actually look, to take seriously every dime you encounter from these key years, to treat every 1998 D, every 2003 D, every 2015 P, every 2018 D as a potential treasure rather than an ordinary coin, because the entire history of rare coin collecting is a history of ordinary people making extraordinary discoveries simply because they looked when everyone else wasn't looking, because they saw possibility when everyone else saw pocket change, and because they had the knowledge and the courage to recognize a fortune hiding in plain sight. And now, so do you.